When people are going through something that's really difficult, um, you want to fix it. You feel awkward. You feel like you're uncomfortable, so you immediately want to have that thing. Maybe that's an American thing, real quick, something to put a Band-Aid on it and make it kind of go away. But if you listen to people who are in pain, that's really not usually what they're asking for. Most people who are going through something, a tragedy of some kind, are aware enough that they know that they're not that naive to think there's a quick fix. Sometimes they just want to have someone listen and know that that's what they're going through.
You have an idea of how your life will go, and you try to plan things, and you have this picture in your head of how you expect things to go, and at some point life will begin happening to you, and you'll have to deal with what has happened to you. And those can be amazing, wonderful things, and those can be really tragic, difficult things. And you don't have control. And we need to do the best that we can to deal with things directly and to cope with each other and talk with each other. And I guess if we would have known a little bit more about specifically what the syndrome was early on, and knowing now what hospice brings, and understanding the process of dying, and having reached that point a little bit sooner and not having had to put Anthony through a lot of the testing.
Mm-hmm. Somebody told me the goal of hospice is not to speed things up, but also not to slow things down. And I like that way of looking at it. We didn't go on to hospice to give up and hope that he passes quickly, but we also are not trying to prevent his body from doing what it wants to do. And I like that idea of just being able to sit with him during this time and not looking at hospice as this really scary way of throwing in the towel and just turning your back on the person, but instead really being willing to sit with the person and go through it with them and allow it to be maybe a more peaceful experience than they might have had otherwise. When Elizabeth comes for her nursing visits, we'll talk a lot about what we can expect, different ways that it could play out. And it's terrible to be at a point where you have hopes like, oh, I hope he goes this way. But I always hoped for something quick for him, like that the heart would fail quickly. With his heart problems, I've talked about which routes his heart could take. Like a heart attack would be for me the most merciful. For him. And then there's congestive heart failure, which is long and drawn out. That's not my hope, but that's a possibility. And then there's the fact that his neurological system is so unstable that he will lose the ability to coordinate his life systems like breathing and eating. And then there's his will not to eat, which interestingly, because he is not in control of much of his body. He doesn't move his arms and legs purposefully. He doesn't do much with his body purposefully. He actually can refuse to eat, which is a blessing, really. It is in some weird way wonderful, because he can actually clamp the nipple and prevent it. He will let it flow into his mouth without drinking, and he can even do no with his head. So that's the other option. And for me, that's the hardest, because as the mom, I just, my heart and my mind don't agree. And even if I know he's refusing to eat, I still want to feed. And most likely, given the preview he gave us last week, it would be him refusing to eat. That seems like what is down the road. And that means less eating, more sleeping, dehydration, and his heart is not in great shape. So when his body is challenged, the heart doesn't circulate as well. And so beyond that, he could, fall asleep and just not wake up. That's the scenario we're, I think, looking at as being most likely.